Hey folks, welcome back to Talon Africa on this lovely 19th of November. Chris here, and I'm coming to you live from Central Pennsylvania. My special featured guest today will be former USA Eagle captain Blaine Scully. We'll have him on in just a moment, but before we get started, I thought it'd be really interesting for folks to see his farewell video from USA Rugby. So we're going to play that right now, and then we'll get started with Blaine on the channel shortly afterwards. I'll introduce him. So just a moment here, folks. Here comes the video from USA Rugby. Enjoy this.
It is with a heavy but grateful heart that I officially announce my retirement from the sport of rugby. Sport is special, teaches, tests, and offers feedback in its honest and sometimes brutal way. It inspires our passion to grow, to be better, and always offers the challenge of next week.
Good work.
But sport is also temporary. At some point, the game must move on, and that's okay. No matter how much we love it, no matter how much we care, it is important to remember, it's just a game. It's a difficult thing to say that I will no longer be a professional international rugby player. What I love so much about the game is how it challenged me in every imaginable way. Whether it was in defense or attack, in the air or on the ground, in the meeting room or at training, the challenge was set, not alone, but with a group, a team that you respect and trust will always be what I miss the most. For over 10 years, I have accepted the responsibility of the U.S. jersey and hope to live up to what it means to be an Eagle. I'm proud of what I did. It was the honor of my life to represent the United States. But as the great Bill Russell said, you play until there are no games left in your jersey. It's my turn to give it back. My career has never been defined by the number of international caps or the contract signed, but by the way I competed, the way I prepared each day as a professional, the type of teammate I was, the way I represented my country, and the way I played the game.
He's in! The USA have a vital score right.
For me, this is more of an opportunity to say thank you. Friends, teammates and opponents, coaches and fans, and to the clubs and countries, and of course the game itself. You have my deepest thanks for the experience of a lifetime. As I move forward to face life's changes, and there are no more tackles to be made or high balls to be caught, rugby will always be a part of me. It's just the start of a world that I haven't yet found.
There's Scully again on the high ball.
My life isn't narrowing, it's expanding. I'm left filled with gratitude and hope, thankful for what I have, the people that have impacted me, and how I'm leaving the game. I look forward to the next tackle.
Wow, folks, I'll tell you what, it's going to be tough to top that. That's quite an impressive video from USA Rugby and quite a farewell from Blaine. Wonderful quotes there and great sentiments about the game of rugby. Folks, if you're unfamiliar with Blaine Scully, then you don't know much about USA Eagles rugby. But let me just give you a little background as we bring him in here in just a moment. He played fullback and wing throughout his career. He was the Eagles captain, also co-captain with Todd Clever, one of the most famous USA rugby players. He played for both the Cardiff Blues and the Leicester Tigers. And also, a lot of people don't know this, but you have a lot of players associations and unions for leagues. The USA Rugby Players Association, he's a co-founder of that with James Gillenwater. And he's got a lot of appearances in professional rugby as well as for the Eagles. I believe 54 appearances for the Eagles. We'll talk to him just a moment about that. Also played USA Sevens, I think in 9 tournaments total. He studied at UCLA and then transferred to Cal Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and competed in the Collegiate Rugby Championship down here in Philadelphia, just a couple hours from where I'm sitting at. And this is interesting for folks. Blaine and I both have a degree in history, so it will be interesting to talk about that. So with that, folks, let me welcome into the program. This is USA Eagle, Blaine Scully. And there he is, folks. Welcome to the stream, Blaine.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's awesome. Thanks for getting back with me. I first reached out to Blaine back in July, but he's been quite the busy beaver trying to build a post-rugby career, and so he was quite busy, but I think he missed my message. But when he saw it the next time, he was right on it and said, yeah, I'd love to come on the program. So glad to have you on, Blaine.
Yeah, well, I also had a newborn baby at that point, too, so I was probably in the middle of nap time and bottle feeding. So, but very happy to join you.
Well, that's always a challenge. That'll fill up your days and nights and keep you going quite a bit. So congratulations on the newborn there. That's awesome news as well.
Yeah, our first one. So it was unintended, but I guess in so many ways during these difficult times, it's nice to be reminded of the little blessings, like our new baby girl, and whose name is Sadie, and so we're in love for sure.
Well, one thing's for sure with this unfortunate situation, and because of COVID-19 and people being at home far more than they normally would be, certainly gives you a lot of time to bond with your child at an early stage of her life. A lot of times, given the career that you've had and what you've been involved with, I think it's pretty likely you'd probably be traveling around the world if you were not at home. So it's just probably a good benefit for your daughter.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was saying to my wife the other day, it will be the first time I haven't left the United States if we don't leave the country. So my passport's been gathering dust. But as you said, I mean, that was sort of the intention of coming home and moving home, was to be closer to family, kind of start on this new journey after making tackles for a living and really enjoying what that was like. And unfortunately, I haven't got to see my family in California too much because we've settled close to my wife's family in New Jersey. Likely going to be moving down to the DC, Northern Virginia area in the coming months. But yeah, I guess in some ways I retired at a very interesting time from a career transition standpoint. There's always going to be some sort of transitional element, I'm sure, as you can appreciate, being in a sort of very regimented, scheduled environment where you knew what you needed to do in order to prepare day in and day out. And all of a sudden, again, I was probably as prepared as anyone for that transition, or I'd like to think I was, but it's a learning experience, which I'm really enjoying.
No, absolutely. It's interesting that you make that comparison. It's one that, I mean, I've thought about, but I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it. I thought about it from a personal standpoint, but I guess in a broader context, there's always people moving from one career field or from one phase of their life to another phase. And in your case, and in my case, you announced your retirement, I think it was in March of this year, from Test Rugby. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So March of this year. So for me, I didn't have a choice to leave. I mean, it's by law. I served the maximum time I could as a colonel, and so I retired after 36 years. But so for me, it was October. But I didn't really get into starting the next phase. I prepared for it the past several years, but I wasn't really going to start until about February, March, April timeframe. So that transition, because of what's happened in the world with Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19, is probably been very interesting for folks like you and I who are going from something to a new phase. But I think in both our cases, we're both relying on our experiences and using that for the next phase. So will you be getting into broadcasting? I think you've done a little bit of broadcasting.
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of that, although I haven't been back in the studio for a few months now. I'm actually going back to school. I'm going to, in January, I'll be, I actually haven't even announced this publicly. This will be the first time I've said so. I'll be going to Oxford for my executive MBA, so I'm pretty excited about that. Again, trying to identify and understand where I fit. So I've done some general consulting, advisory work with a few different sport technology companies. Looking at media, looking at potentially the finance world and the intersection of sport and private equity has become a really interesting sort of space, and maybe do something entirely different as well. That I'm not necessarily quite sure yet, but my objective is to be as open as possible to anything and everything, and sort of let my curiosity drive a lot of what I do, and again, at the end of the day, try to find something that I can connect with in sort of the same way I was able to with sport.
No, I think it's a great approach. The world really is your oyster. People that try to limit themselves, I think that's self-defeating. There are so many different things people can do out there. You certainly have the affable personality that will get you into all the fields you just talked about, and you'll probably be quite successful in all those. Now, you grew up in California, but you got into rugby. I mean, soccer's huge in California. How did you get into rugby, and when did that happen? Because guys like Perry Baker don't get into it until late in life. And when I say late in life, they're not 70, but you know what I mean. They didn't. It was much later. But I mean, in South Africa and in England, people are playing rugby when they're 6 years old. So.
There's actually, it's incredible rugby history in Northern California. So you think about the 1920, 1924 Olympians. They were mainly from, Cal, Stanford, Santa Clara, all that Northern California region. I'm from Sacramento, which has quite a bit of rugby. I went to Jesuit High School, which is a pretty well known rugby playing high school. Although I didn't play in high school, I drove by the rugby field every day. I was basketball, water polo, and swimming, and originally the intention was to play college water polo, but I guess I kind of knew it wasn't what I was supposed to do, or somebody knew it wasn't what I was supposed to do, and ended up finding rugby as a college freshman, introduced by one of my former high school friends, and knew this was what I was supposed to do. So I ended up chasing that around for just over a decade. And what an incredible journey, what an incredible experience. The friends I met, the separated shoulders I now have as a reward for that.
You probably could have done without those.
But I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's just incredible experience, and really for me, it was sort of an exercise in being as good as I possibly could be at something and trying to achieve. And it's just an incredible forum to try to do that, and the folks you meet, and learn how to be a teammate and be on teams and compete for your country. It's just it was all really meaningful for me.
Well, you went to UCLA for a couple of years, University of California, Los Angeles. Then you transferred to UC Berkeley, Cal Bears. What happened there? Why did you? Because you're a history student. Did it a different program, or did you go because of rugby, or what was the transfer about? Or if it's a secret, you don't have to tell us.
No, it's quite all right. I suppose I transferred for all the reasons the kid transfers. I'm from Northern California, and the idea of being closer to Sacramento. That there was probably a bit of the rugby element as well, and knowing that it's what I needed to do, or what I wanted to do, and to learn from some of the best rugby minds in the country, and also I was a student, and I felt Cal was the best fit for me moving forward, and so that was probably the reason why I made a decision more than anything else. Is as you kind of appreciate when you're young, I guess you don't necessarily know right away, but then you start to get a better and clearer picture around the direction you want to go, and then you make some decisions to hopefully support your transition on that path. So, and that was probably the main thing.
No, those are great reasons. I recently I went to Ohio because my mother's not well, and I came back a couple of days ago and actually went down to campus where I was an undergraduate at Ohio University. So that was quite an interesting experience. Of course, it's a ghost town because only a small percentage of students are allowed on campus because of the COVID. So it was kind of weird to be walking around the campus when almost no one's there. But it was quite a good experience to get back on campus once again. But you made a good choice. As far as from a rugby standpoint, the Cal, my goodness. The CRC, the Collegiate Rugby Championship over here in Chester. Frankly, I got to be honest. I almost didn't want to go anymore because it got kind of boring. Cal wins all the time. No, but to be actually, in the interest of full disclosure before you, Blaine, actually, I got less interested because Cal pulled out of the tournament, and I didn't think the tournament was nearly as good with Cal's absence. So, but they did come back, and but this year it didn't happen. So, what was the CRC like for you? Because that's an interesting tournament to say the least.
Yeah, it was a great thing for college rugby. I was at the first two. So the first one was in Ohio, actually, and the second one was in Philly. And it was a fantastic event. I'd played on the U.S. team at that point in a couple of the HSBC Sevens tournaments, and I felt every bit of the same jitters playing at the CRC. Just the being on NBC and having all these name brand schools and competing on behalf of your university. It was just what you hope, college rugby could look like in the next decade, right? Just a really well done event.
No, absolutely. I have to say it is well done because they also have high school teams out there. They do tournaments outside while it's going on. So that's kind of great to get more people involved in the game of rugby. And you're right, NBC does the coverage, which has been brilliant. It's been fantastic. I really enjoy going there to see all these college players and see, well, gosh, okay, that guy, that gal is going to be on the Eagles. I can just see it. I think year before last, Mike Friday came up with Anaya Tapper, I think, was there, and who else was there? Perry Baker was a couple others, Madison Hughes. It was really great to see those guys there. Of course, Madison played for Dartmouth, played in the CRC as well, so he's an alumnus. Chris Thomas was there as well. She was great to have along. So it's always nice to see that. But a lot of people don't know that we have quite the rugby history here in the United States. Because we were not a professional sport, and until the 1 year aborted effort with pro rugby, which just lasted one season, but now we got Major League Rugby. But before that, we didn't have professional rugby here, and so people don't look at the USA as a rugby nation. But as you alluded to earlier, we won the 1920 and 1924 Olympics, surprised the world, I think, back then. Then we didn't win anything until a long time after that, but we had a long history. But it's been at the club level and university level. It's not been a professional sport until recently, and so I think that's one reason why a lot of people don't think of the United States and think of rugby. But we have among the highest number of registered rugby players of any country in the world, and it's been around for a long time. So it's a shame that people don't look at the USA and think of rugby, but do you think that we might be starting to gain traction? That's been an argument people have been having for 30 years, that USA rugby is on the verge of bursting out. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely have, some momentum. And as you alluded to, I mean, there is some, pretty incredible history at Cal. We're the oldest sport on campus, right? And, that's a really kind of cool, unique touch point that we have in connection to the school and to the game in general. I mean, I think there's a lot to be positive about as far as the sport's overall, potential, but there's an incredible amount of work to do. I try to stay, relatively measured with, future projections based on the sport's, potential versus where it is, but then how do you sort of scale to that? So I think, I sort of shy away from the whole sleeping giant thing, because I think it's pretty lazy in the sense that, there's a lot of people who are working really, really hard at growing the game every day. I think what they mean is that we have, tons of really good athletes, which we do. We have a lot of, engaged, fans and of lots of sports, which we do. We have, incredible sports market, the most competitive in any world as far as dollars being spent, which, again, sort of creates an environment where rugby could find a place. And then, based on the sheer scale of our country, really kind of take off in comparison to the rest of the world. But I mean, as you kind of said, it takes a lot of work from the interscholastic youth through college system, which is obviously really important for rugby to work here. We don't really do academies in the same way that they do in other parts of the world. And then the Major League Rugby being able to provide sort of that aspiration and also, geographic footprints across the country, which are really important from an infrastructure point of view. And, hopefully we can continue to achieve and be as competitive as possible on the international stage as well from a national team perspective. So, I mean, there's a lot in there. And like I said, we have a lot of work to do, but there's potentially some stuff to look forward to as well.
No, absolutely. And that's, while I'm a big fan of Major League Rugby and a big supporter for it from the outset, I'm also realistic. It's great, and I'm glad it's successful, and I hope that the teams are profitable. But until we put more than 3,000 or 5,000 people in seats for games, we're really haven't gotten where we need to get. So I think it takes a long time to get there, as you said, a smart approach to that. But it is encouraging. I think that we actually have an opportunity for players to progress all the way up to potentially the professional level. Also, we seem to be getting a fair number of talented and experienced folks coming over from elsewhere. And contrary to what some people have claimed, they're not past it. Joe Peterson's not past it. Ben Foden's not past it. We've had Bostero came over this year for Major League Rugby. We had Cathal Marsh was here. A lot of international players are coming over playing Major League Rugby. For such a new league, it's actually, I think, encouraging, and we'll see where it goes from here. But it is kind of exciting to see Major League Rugby get off and have professional rugby in the States. You had to go abroad to play professional rugby, and so you went to Leicester and signed a contract with Leicester. And look, I've never watched you play at Leicester, but I know some people from Leicester, and when your name is mentioned, they seem to love you. They absolutely, you were very much a fan favorite. At least that's what I hear in Leicester. Is that a true story?
They were very nice to me, for sure. They were very kind. So I went on Leicester on a trial, right? I was a 2-week trialist, and 2 weeks turned into 4 weeks, which turned into a couple years. It was a really hard decision to leave Leicester. Again, you have to make hard decisions in professional sport and business in general, and that's sort of the challenge of being a professional sportsman, is always balance your your passion versus, what's the most responsible thing to do from a career standpoint. But I loved my time at Leicester. Incredible fans, incredible rugby history and culture. Welford Road is just an incredible place to play. I think I all I tried to do was play as hard as I could, and I enjoyed every minute I was there, and I wasn't afraid to sort of express that. And I think kind of people appreciate someone who gives their all and then give something back to the crowd on occasion as well. So that was really kind of how I tried to live my life and play the game, is just give it everything you can and don't be afraid to show that you're having fun either. It's kind of what you're there for, right?
Exactly.
It's just,
if you're not enjoying it, what's the point? It's fine to
exactly.
potentially make a living off of it, but if you're not enjoying it, you're just miserable. Unless you're a Shirley MacLaine or a Buddhist, as far as I know, you just get one shot at this path in life, so make the most of it. So I agree with you on that. I'm going to ask a question, then we'll switch to the Cardiff Blues, but this is a question from the chat here from Landon. Landon says he's seen quite a few South Africans leaving to play in the U.S., and that's a true statement there. He says, how do you feel about people from other countries coming to the U.S. and eventually representing the U.S. too? I presume he means the Eagles.
Right. I think it's a fair question. In some ways, that's sort of America, isn't it? Right. You have folks who come from all over the world who, see opportunities to go to university or professional opportunities, whatever those might be. I think it's probably it's a challenge for Major League Rugby to make sure that the overall value and from a competition standpoint is at a high level, but at the same time, that competition is enhanced by overseas talent, but at the same time, it can't restrict opportunities, say, from domestic players from, achieving, professional contract. So again, that's sort of a challenging one to work through, but, I don't really have any issues with any of that. It's just all a balance.
No, absolutely. So you mentioned this question that the person asked in chat about international players coming over. So, for instance, a couple years ago when Major League Rugby got started, I had to pick a team, and there was no East Coast team. And so I'm like, who do I want to support? The Texas squad? No, I can't do that. Seattle? No, I can't do that. So I said, the Utah Warriors. I like the logo. It's Utah. Beautiful place. I like it. So I said, I'm going to be a Utah fan until we get an East Coast team. And so I supported the Warriors. And so I ordered a jersey, okay? And I didn't get it. I'm like, where's my jersey at? So I called them, and I said, listen, guys, not to be rude or anything, but I ordered this jersey weeks ago, and I haven't seen it shipped. Is there something wrong? And the guy says, oh, no, you have to understand, we're just getting started here. It's new. I apologize. Hang on a second. Let me. One of the players is here. Why don't you chat with him while I check on your order? And he goes, yeah, hi, this is Paul Lasika. How you doing? Hey, thanks a lot for supporting the Warriors. What the heck?
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me into where I was going to go next with this, Blaine, is that I think for people who follow rugby, one of the great things about it is that, now I'm sure there's probably a few prima donnas somewhere, but I've never met any prima donnas. You get that in other professional sports, and maybe it's because rugby is a relatively junior professional sport. Even internationally it didn't start till 95, so it's not been that long. But everybody I've ever met in rugby, whether it's Dan Norton or it's Perry Baker or it's you or it's Brian Habana, everybody's approachable. The athletes are approachable, and I'm sure everybody has their bad days, but I've never really seen a bad experience with rugby players. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people who grow to like the game really like it, because players are approachable and they're just regular guys and gals for the most part. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's why I love the game, right? I love the culture and ethos associated with being a value-driven sport. I think that's really healthy and positive and important. The sportsmanship aspect of the game, where you can kind of go head to toe for 80 minutes and still look somebody in the eye and shake their hand. The fact that the game's really inclusive and open. These are all really positive things that, as you kind of say, attract maybe a certain type of person to the game. But you're right. I think there's hopefully, and it's one of the challenges for the future. So how do you kind of maintain and keep those core elements that, are so unique and special to the sport, but at the same time, kind of, modernizing the way every business and sport has to in the 21st century. So it'll be a real challenge for the game, but you hope that we're always able to maintain that sort of human element to it.
No, I absolutely agree. And then David in the chat says rugby fans will braai together. Soccer fans need to be separated. It's true. When I went to the World Cup in 2015, I went to Brighton and I went down there for the South Africa-Japan game. And then I was there for the USA-Samoa game after. I think it was Samoa. Yeah, it was Samoa after that. Yep. And I went for the Springboks game and I tried to enter the stadium. They said, you can't enter. I'm like, I have a ticket. And they go, no, you can't enter. I'm like, what's wrong with my ticket? It's not fraudulent. I brought it from the World Cup. No, sir, you can't enter here. Okay, where do I enter? You have to walk all the way around the stadium. I'm like, why is that? And when I entered, I realized why. Because the soccer fans get so pissed and liquored up that they used to beat each other up and attack each other. People get killed in the stands. And so they made turnstiles. You can only go into certain parts of the arena or the stadium, which is frustrating. As Americans and other countries, we're accustomed to walking around the stadium during intermission or halftime or break and such. And so it was really weird. But I discovered that's because of soccer fans in England. So I prefer to go to a rugby-specific pitch so that I can walk around the arena.
I hear you.
Pretty crazy stuff there. But no, it's not to beat up on soccer, but I think that's a fair statement. I mean, we sadly know the history of soccer hooligans, and fortunately we don't have those in rugby, and let's hope that, as you said, we keep it straight like that. So let me shift gears a little bit there, Blaine. You studied history. What sort of history did you study? I focused on African history. Where was your focus?
American history. My plan there was, initially my plan was to go to law school after university, but I ended up making tackles for a lot longer than I thought I would. So, maybe eventually still go back after I finish my MBA. But that was kind of my plan. I've always been a student of history. I love the stories of people and learning and understanding a bit deeper of why things are the way they are and how they kind of came to be. So, I wrote my thesis on the Tuskegee Airmen and how their performance in World War II led to desegregation of the Army, which was, really fascinating, dive into, kind of, again, more American rooted concepts around, that era of our history and something really, really positive that, I just thought was really impactful and unique. So I'm a big believer in studying history, learning from it as much as you can, because it's really the story of people and the story of us in so many ways.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. And then you picked a fantastic topic. The Tuskegee Airmen are a great part of our history and something to be quite proud of. They did a bang-up job. I think there's a couple of them still alive today, one or two. I think it's just amazing what they accomplished during the war. Fantastic, and all that they overcame. And, of course, famously, our federal government wasn't segregated, but President Wilson segregated the civil service shamefully during his administration, which is disgraceful. But after that, the first institution of the federal government that was desegregated was, of course, the Army, and that was by directive of President Truman. Thank goodness for that executive order. And so we finally ended segregation in the military back there in the early 1950s, which was fantastic. And but the Tuskegee Airmen, great topic. I took the CLEP test. I don't know if you're familiar with the college level examination program. It's exams you can take. Okay. You can get college credit rather than 10 courses if you have experience and knowledge. So when I was in the Army, going to school at night, I was working on my associate's degree because, as you and I talked before the stream, I went to college for a year and then went into the Army. So I was working on an associate's degree at night, and so I took a few CLEP tests, and I took one for African American history. And most of the guys I worked with in the motor pool in my signal unit were black or Puerto Rican. It was about 1/3 white, 1/3 black, 1/3 Puerto Rican. And I walked back down because back in those days there was no internet, so you had to wait weeks for your score to come back in the mail. So I went to exactly. So I went to the education center.
Oh, dial up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, no, we didn't even have that back then. I mean, that was no. So my score came in the mail. I went to the education center. I collected it. And I walked back, and the maximum you could get was 3 semester hours. And I think the score on the test was like a maximum of 80. It was some kind of adjusted scale. And so I walked the motor pool, and guys like, Wyatt, how'd you do? And I said, I got 78 out of 80. So I got 3 hours. Like, what? How'd you do that? How did you do so well on an African American history test? I said, because it's American history, man. Yeah, it's American history. Why wouldn't I know about African American history? It's all part of our history.
Yep.
So the fact that they broke it out into a separate course just made it easier for me to get one college class out of the way I didn't have to take.
Right. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. No, it worked out pretty well for me though, but I really enjoyed that. So do you still have an interest in history? Is it something you follow or?
Yeah. I actually, I'm a closet nerd, I guess. So I've just finished up a class on sort of the history of the American Revolution. So, again, I try to read a fiction and a nonfiction book always at the same time. And like I said, I'm, whether it's ancient history to American history, I'm kind of there.
Awesome. Folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Adopt Africa channel. My special feature guest today is the one, the only Blaine Scully, former USA Eagle captain, co-captain with Todd Clever as well. Also played for Sevens, played at Leicester, played at Cardiff, had quite the interesting career. And now he's announced his retirement early this year from Test Rugby, and he's moving into other spheres. And as he mentioned here, in a bit of a coup, we found out that he's going to Oxford to do his executive MBA. That's
you guys can't tell anybody yet, though.
Okay, we'll keep it a secret. I'll delete that part of the program. But that's funny. So you did play in HSBC Sevens. Did you have a favorite tournament that you went to? A lot of people love Hong Kong. A lot of people like Dubai, strangely enough.
Yeah, no, I was injured back in 2012 before Hong Kong, so I never got to go there. Wellington was great, and then I mainly, because of my university schedule, was only able to play in the European legs. So Twickenham is a fantastic to play rugby, so I mean I'd probably say somewhere like, but then Edinburgh was equally kind of amazing because that was my first tournament. So I'll say Edinburgh.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Twickenham would be amazing. I've been to rugby all over the United Kingdom, and I have yet to be to Murrayfield or Twickenham. Those are the two places you have to go, and I haven't been to either one. I have been to Millennium Stadium, which they just renamed in Cardiff, but the Blues don't play in Millennium Stadium, do they? They play in the stadium behind you.
Well, we play there on occasion. So this is the Arms Park here, this pitch here, and then the Millennium, which is now called the Principality, is the monstrosity in the background. So we usually play our Judgment Day match against one of the other regions, typically the Ospreys in the Principality. But yeah, I mean, an incredible place to play rugby.
Oh no, it is. My first time there was during the Olympics, the London Olympics. I went down there to watch South Korea play against England in soccer, and I'm not a big fan of soccer. I actually literally sat in the top row. There were no rows above me. It's quite a ways up there, and you got to be physically in shape to climb those steps. Are almost near vertical going up. But then for the Rugby World Cup in 2015, I had much better seats. I was sitting down close to the pitch on the sidelines, and it was amazing for the World Cup. I would never tell people that actually went to Millennium or Principality. I can't use to calling it Principality, but I would never say I went to Millennium if I had never watched a rugby game there. I mean, because how can you go there and not watch rugby? So for a long time, I didn't really share that I've been there until because I only watched soccer in it. But quite an amazing place. Where's your favorite place to have played then when you played over there?
Man, there's so many good stadiums.
Well, Twickenham's kind of a mecca.
It's a tough one. I think. Well, yeah, it is. I'd say Clermont in France. We played a Heineken Cup quarterfinal game there, and it was an incredible place to play. And part of it's just the context, playing in a European knockout game and how loud and rambunctious they are. It was just an incredible memory.
No, the French are amazing. It's surprising how into rugby the French really are. It's for me, it was something. I went there for the Women's World Cup, and I went to Stade Jean-Bouin in Paris, and the crowds were just absolutely amazing for all the teams. They were just rooting them all on. They really, really, really do love rugby in France. It's quite surprising.
Yeah, they do.
They really do. Now, when you were at Cal, you guys won the national championship twice. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And who did you guys play in those two championships?
BYU in both.
Oh, in both of them. Okay. And how did it go? Because I wasn't a fan of yours back then. So how did it go? Did you guys beat them?
No, we lost my first year at Cal to BYU, and then we won the final too. And I mean, they're always super competitive games. I mean, the Cal versus BYU game felt like a test match back then. But yeah, great memories.
So the Brew, who's in South Africa, asked me to ask you who your top 3 players are and why. I presume he means who you played against.
That I played against?
Yeah, maybe you have different top 3 for who you played against, and then we can ask you who your favorite 3 you played with are. But that might put might put you in a bind with some other Eagles. But
no, I mean, there's so many players. I mean, I played against so many of the greats, from Dan Carter to Brian Abana to some not very nice people to tackle, like Veronique Iganova, Fiji, incredible player who I played against and with. I've had a number of those players, and I mean, again, it's, you just can go down the list around people who have been incredible players who you've really enjoyed competing against. I've had the good fortune of being at the top end of the game long enough to sort of make the rounds. I think the only team I actually didn't play that's in, say, the top 15 or 20 teams would be Wales, actually, and I played there for 4 years. So I played against pretty much everybody in the last, since 2010, 2011. So from Brian O'Driscoll to who you name, Victor Matfield, you name it. So,
well, I'll tell you what, when I do get Victor Matfield on the channel, because we're talking about,
I'm not sure if I played it, because I think he played in the 2015 World Cup. I'm not sure he played in that game that we played though.
Your game, that was the one game I did miss when the Eagles
Olympic
played the
Stadium.
Springboks. Yeah, I missed that game because I was up north for Scotland and Samoa, I think, because I went to 17 games in the 2015 World Cup. Traveled all over.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh, I had 18 for Japan, but
that's committed.
No, it is. Well, I've been to every World Cup since 2011. New Zealand 2011, 2014 for the women in Paris, 2015 in England, 17 matches. 2017 in Ireland for the Women's World Cup again, 2018 for the Sevens in San Francisco, and then Japan. So I've been to all of them.
That's amazing.
Well, rugby union, not rugby league. I haven't been to any rugby league World Cups.
Yeah. That's all right.
But that was. I don't know if he played in that game because, again, I didn't go to see that particular game. But when I do get Victor Matfield, I'm gonna remark to him about how I miss him being on the Springboks, because anytime there was a line out, I didn't have anything to worry about. I guaranteed that he was going to get the line out. And if he went up against the opposition, probably about 33% of the time we could count on a steal, which was kind of
sure.
So Brian O'Driscoll, one of my favorite rugby players of all time. He was brilliant for Ireland, he must have been a lot of fun to play with that guy. Yeah,
well, I never played with him. I played against him.
Against
him. 2011 World Cup in New Zealand. It was I mean, he's obviously one of the all-time greats. So that's who you want to compete against. It's the arena you want to be in, right? You want to play against the best and see how you measure up.
No, absolutely, I agree with you. But I will confess, I don't relish the thought of coming up against the Fijians or Samoans running out there on the left wing, because I'm sure they would lay me out. Those guys are huge.
I've been laid out a few times, yeah.
Those guys are huge. Yikes. Now, there was another question over here from the chat. Let me get to it very quickly here. So this was from Landon once again. He said, and I'll answer this, and I'll give you a chance to answer too, but he says, because you have a different perspective having been inside the wire, but he says, since the sevens team is so good, does that hurt the 15s development? Would most of the best players rather play sevens and 15s? I would say that our development to this point, and then you'll jump in a second, with sevens is interesting because a lot of people are introduced to sevens later. They're already athletes doing something else, like Perry Baker was playing football, introduced to it, and a lot of other players. So I don't know that it's necessarily hurt 15s, but we definitely see players like Madison Hughes who play both and then have to shift from one to the other. So I'm not really sure that it hurts the development, but I think that because of the stage of where sevens was in the U.S. and where the Eagles 15s are at, that maybe in the future it could be a problem, but historically it's not been a problem. And what are your thoughts on that, Blaine? Do you agree or disagree?
No, I think they're complementary, and they should always be. I don't think one detracts from the other. I think being good in one is hopefully something that allows greater visibility and something that then trickles down and adds to the whole. So I think it's a net positive. And again, like sevens, it tends to be a really good development vehicle, which is how I developed. And at that point, it made me a better 15s player. So I was a better 15s player on the national team because of my time in the sevens program, and vice versa. That happens as well.
No, absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. When I came back from Africa a few years ago to teach the Army War College for my last assignment before I retired, I contacted the local rugby club here in Harrisburg and said, "Hey, listen, can I help out in any way? You looking for help raising funds? You need someone to be an assistant coach or something like that?" And they tried to get me to play for their sevens team. Like, you might have missed the part where I'm 50 now. I could play sevens, but I can't catch everybody anymore. A few years ago, I was fine, but that's a young man's game. So, do you have a preference for either game? Do you find sevens more interesting or 15s more interesting? I think they both have their strong merits. What I like about sevens is that you have this massive tournament, you just keep playing and playing, and it's not 24/7, but it's a whole day of activity. Whereas for 15s, it's a single game you got to build up for. But do you have a preference, or did you like aspects of both?
Aspects of both. They just both have different demands. They ask different things of you, and therefore you're challenged in different ways, which I think as an athlete is kind of what you want. I mean, you're right. Sevens tends to be for a younger athlete who's able to bounce back quicker and quicker. 15s, being able to visualize and see and strategize and know what the pictures are that you're seeing and how those kind of might lead to certain things is all helpful information. So it tends to sort of track that way, I think.
No, I think that's a great point to make about it. I've never played sevens. I've just played 15, so I really can't speak from a player standpoint. But watching the game, it seems to me that it is very different. And I would say, for the 2019 World Cup, the Springboks, who won it, of course, Rassi Rasmus, the team he picked, I've always said from the moment he picked the team that maybe not all the best players at all the positions, but I think he probably picked the best team. And I think that it's just a World Cup where we've seen a team that was probably the best team and brought the best elements together. And of course, his substitution plan with the bomb squad, bringing people in, it was like watching any opponent they play against for the first half. Everyone's out there, you're getting tired, you come out for the second half, and then you get 10 minutes in the second half, and boom, they bring out replacements, and they're as good as the starters or better. And so you just get knackered pretty quickly. I think that that was a really interesting aspect of this World Cup. And of course, the Springboks are the first team to ever lose a pool stage game and actually win the World Cup. Now, you were a player there, so I'll ask you about your experience at the World Cups in a moment. But what do you think about the Springboks having won this one in Japan? Any thoughts on that one?
No, I thought they were well deserved. I mean, they had the right strategy, they had the right tactics, and they had the personnel to do it. They knew their strength was physicality and set piece, and they leaned into it. But I mean, they had some dynamic back set that they could use as well once they were able to beat you up up front. So I mean, I thought tactically they were brilliant. They were physically prepared for how they wanted to play, and they executed, which is the game.
So the Japan itself, I have to say this. I mean, I've always wanted to go to Japan. I'd never been, and I wasn't for a microsecond disappointed in the experience. The Japanese were amazing. The venues were top notch, at least from a fan's perspective. I wasn't in locker rooms, so I can't speak to that. But I really, really enjoyed it. It was a great experience, and I was so excited that I got to go. I did go to all of the Eagles games, so I saw you out there at all the games, and then I did go to all the Springboks games. But that was a bit of a challenge to get to all those games. Did you have a favorite game in the World Cup in 2019 that stands out?
Well, I agree with you. It was my favorite World Cup, actually, of the three that I competed in. I mean, it's hard to sort of pick out a favorite. I suppose like the England game was a tough game, but the stadium was amazing and a great way to kind of kick off the World Cup. Although competitively frustrating, the French game was a tough context for 60, 70 minutes. I love the Argentina match. It was a beautiful day. There's tons of kids in the stands waving flags, and the Tonga game was tough. I ended up getting injured that game, but which ended up being my last USA game, which is, I guess, fitting in a way. But so it's hard to kind of pick out a favorite, but overall, I mean, I just loved my time there.
Well, of those games, I have to be honest. I stayed in the Hilton there, and I didn't know you guys were staying in the Hilton. So I'm a Hilton Diamond member, so I booked the Hilton, and I'm like, oh, look, the team's here. So I said hey to a bunch of guys. But at that game, I sat with Hanko Hemeshuis's mom, and it was absolutely brilliant against France. That game was getting to the stadium was a bit of a headache because of where it was at for a fan, but a beautiful stadium. And I'm telling you, the French were all cocky. Their fans, they're running their mouths all around the family and supporter section there at the stadium. They were running their mouths, and the second half they got nervous. They got quiet till about the 67th minute. That was look, the Eagles. I think you guys played out of your minds that six. I think I mean you can tell me if you agree or disagree, but I think people got tired. But so much effort was put in. It was such an amazing, exciting game that even if you were a fan of Les Bleus, you had to appreciate the level of rugby that was being played for this first 60 minutes. It was unbelievable from a fan's perspective. So thanks a lot for that game. That was brilliant. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Now I got excited there. I didn't make the claim, but I'm like, oh, I sense an upset. This is kind of exciting. I sense an upset, and that alone made it worthwhile. It was a great experience. The last game, the Tonga game, that was a bit frustrating because I thought we had that in the bag. I really thought we were going to win that game, and the boys put up a good effort out there. As you said, you got injured in that game, but that was an interesting arena there. The crowd was pretty cool, and it was an awful lot of Japanese at that game because they're the ones who bought most of the tickets for that game. But I really enjoyed that venue. But as a player, did you mentioned the England game? I should mention after the England game, I actually went back to the hotel where you guys were staying at and had dinner with the team that evening. I sat down with who was I sitting with? Who's the guy from New Zealand who plays for the Eagles? What's his name? Big guy. Drawing a blank right now. Anyway, it'll come to me later. But I sat down and actually had dinner with you guys because I was invited in by a couple of the players and their families said, come down and sit down with us. I didn't eat till everybody else was done eating, but I did enjoy that experience, the hotel there in Kobe. That was quite interesting. But the England game had to be a tough game because England was just they were a strong opponent.
Yeah, they were, and I mean after that weekend, I think everyone knew that they were likely going to end up in the final. Potentially take the whole thing, which they play a couple of times them versus South Africa. Maybe you would say it's 50-50, but South Africa ended up on top, obviously. But yeah, England was an incredible opponent, and they did a lot of things to challenge us in a lot of ways that actually I like to think helped us in the end get to where we needed to be. But the margins are just so thin in test match level rugby, and especially at a World Cup. It's just brutal.
Well, you've had some great coaches with USA Rugby. Mike Tolbert was there. You've had John Mitchell, which was an interesting time. He coached the team largely from South Africa and came back periodically. And then Gary Gold came in, and I got to say, thrilled to death with the results Gary's gotten and with the boys who put out there on the pitch. It was a very exciting season a couple of years ago. Essentially, a unbeaten test season was pretty cool. 2 America's Rugby's Championships trophies. That had to be very awesome to see the Eagles pull that off too. I mean, that's, to my knowledge, that's the first championship of any sorts we've won because we didn't win the Pacific Nations Cup, did we? I think that's the first time we won America's Rugby Championship since the Olympics.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Good stuff. All right, so you've retired from Test Rugby, and now you're going to go work this executive program. We've talked about some of the things you're going to do, but in the meantime, you're staying at home dad there, helping raise your newborn. That's got to be some exciting stuff for you and your spouse.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, it's been actually one of the highlights of this period of time is spending so much time with the both of them, really, and my family who's local here, and kind of just always being able to put things in perspective day in and day out around what's really important.
Absolutely. There's the Brew is asking you. So, all right, fair enough, bro. He says, "Do you have a prediction for the next Rugby World Cup champions?" I think that's a tough one because COVID's really messed up everything. We don't know where we're at. Yeah.
I mean, shoot. Hopefully we have some meaningful international competitions for the rest of the world. I mean, because U.S. unfortunately hasn't been able to play this calendar year. So. I think there'll be some interesting contenders. I mean, I think England and South Africa are definitely up there. I mean, obviously the All Blacks as well. I mean, I think that the 3 of those teams are in a really good position. But I like actually France being a team to surprise people.
No, I'm obviously, well, not obviously, but I'm famously a not supporter of the All Blacks. Not a fan at all. I respect but don't like the All Blacks, and so I reveled in their defeat to the Wallabies recently, and then they lost to the Pumas last week. I was very excited about that. But yeah, no, you can never count the All Blacks out. That's probably why I don't like them. Yeah, they're always there. They're always lurking around. I mean, it's such a big part of the game. When I was there for the World Cup in 2011, you were there, obviously, as a player, but as a fan running around, and I got to 9 matches in 2011. Everywhere I went, when there weren't games going on during the week or something like that, there's kids out playing rugby. That's just what they were doing everywhere. Outside my hotel, I went down to the hot springs, and I can't remember the name right now. It begins with a W. But then went down to a glacier and went skiing during the World Cup. And you guys were playing rugby. I went skiing as well, which was pretty awesome because they have snow on the glacier. But everywhere I went, kids are playing rugby, and that's just what they do. The moment they come out of the crib, they're playing rugby. And gee, it's not a surprise why they're just so good at rugby consistently. But did you have a favorite memory of New Zealand from 2011?
Oh, I love New Zealand. It's an unbelievable country, and I loved it for that fact. I mean, you go get your haircut, they ask you why you missed a tackle on the weekend. But I just everything about New Zealand. I love the people. I loved the country, and yeah, we had an incredible experience. Our welcome ceremony where we had we were able to go spend some time in a traditional Maori village and have our caps presented to us, and it was just a very cool, unique experience for us.
Rotorua, that's the place. I couldn't think it was Rotorua. That's where I went, where they have the mud. But it's kind of like going to Yellowstone, where you've got the geysers or geezers, they like to call them. They prefer to call them. Pretty interesting place. Yeah, no, New Zealand was absolutely brilliant. No regrets. I really enjoyed it. I would say that before 2019, it was hands down my favorite Rugby World Cup. England was great, but it was New Zealand just had a special feeling, but Japan just blew everybody away. That was unbelievable experience. So you've been away for now for several months. Are you missing it already?
I miss elements. Definitely the changing room, the routine. Kind of the feedback I loved, like where am I at versus where I was at yesterday versus where my opposition's at, and obviously the scoreboard was the ultimate feedback. Do I miss like waking up Sunday and not being able to walk? No, no, not at all. But for sure, I mean, I'll miss elements of the arena, but I mean, everything has its time, and that time for me is past now.
Absolutely. Well, maybe perhaps depending on what you do after this, maybe if you hang around the broadcasting a bit, and maybe Brian Habana famously is like a goodwill ambassador for World Rugby, and Dolan Stanford is become the broadcaster extraordinaire. So maybe you can fill a role like that, and you can enjoy the game and be close to the game, but wake up Sunday morning and not be suffering.
Maybe, yeah. Get beat up on Twitter, instead.
Oh, well, Twitter. We'll see how long Twitter lasts. Twitter's in the doghouse with so many people right now on both sides of the aisle when it comes to politics. It's a frustrating thing for them. But somebody said naughty, Chris. What did I say that was naughty? I didn't say anything naughty here. Anyway, so before we get you off, let me ask that question. So you play with a lot of interesting players on the U.S. side. You played with Todd Clever. You were co-captain with him. Do you have any favorite experiences from being an Eagle that you might want to share? One that's not going to get you in any trouble, because I'm sure there's always stories.
No, I'd say that Scotland match is a really.
Is this the one in Houston that we won 30-29?
Yeah. I mean, and probably for not the reasons that people would think of, like just the win. It's more around the process and the journey and the mindset and the preparation, and just kind of being able to share that with that group, I think was a really highlight for me. And obviously, as a sportsman, most people look at the result stuff, but for me, it was always about the locker room and the process that I really enjoyed, which then made that stuff meaningful.
No, so there's a nice comment here from Gert Janssen van Rensburg from South Africa. He said he's always enjoyed watching you play, and you always look like the gentleman on and off the pitch. Wow, that's very kind of him. Thank you.
Well, my mom will be happy about that.
Yeah, she'll know she raised you right. Then that's some good stuff there. Well, I've been a fan of the Springboks since I was introduced to rugby as a freshman at university, not as a player, but one of the upperclassmen in the ROTC program said, "Hey, you coming to the game tonight?" I'm like, "It's Friday. The game's tomorrow." He goes, "No, not football, man. Rugby." I'm like, I'm from Appalachia. We're happy to have electricity and paved roads, which, by the way, is not much of an exaggeration. And he said, no, it'll be fun. Come on down. I said, I've never watched the game. I've heard of it. And I went down, and we were standing in touch because there were no bleachers or anything like that on the band fields where the band would practice at Ohio University. And I'm watching the game go back and forth. I'm like, okay, it's not Australian rules football. It's not American football. This is cool. I like this. And afterwards, of course, I think one side got slaughtered. It must have been like 50-something to 0. But afterwards, everybody's hanging out and having a beer, and we're all getting along. I'm like, this is a cool game. I like it. And that was my introduction to rugby. And, of course, there's no professional rugby. There's no club sports around me. We didn't even have a club team at the university. Just some guys got together to play it. And I couldn't watch it on television. But I became a fan pretty quickly. And as a history student, I looked at what are the teams that have done really well historically. And, of course, England and Ireland and France. And I saw that South Africa had been historically one of the best teams in world rugby. I'm like, South Africa. I like Africa. Okay, so I became a Springboks fan. And then, of course, in '84, we finally got a national team once again. So, but it wasn't well known at the time. So I became a Springboks fan and have stayed one all along. But, of course, I've been an Eagles fan. So the only time it's difficult for me is when the Eagles play the Springboks. And the one chance the two chances I've had to catch them in the World Cup, I missed both those games. So I've never had to root against the Eagles against when they're playing the Springboks. So that's been a good break for me. What's that?
It's a good tactic.
Yeah, no, it works out pretty well.
Always just miss it.
Yeah, exactly. Just missed that game. No, the 2015 World Cup was fascinating for me because, of course, Japan won that big game against the Springboks. But then the last game I went to for that World Cup was you guys against Japan. And Eddie Jones was coaching Japan, as you remember. And people were warming up on the pitch, and I was sitting right in the middle, up close to the press box, but just below where the coaches sit. And Eddie came up the steps to go to the box, where the coaches sit. And as he came up, he had just signed with the Stormers, with Western Province, and I'm a Stormers Western Province fan. So I'm like, hey, Eddie, thanks a lot for signing with the Stormers Western Province. What I didn't know is he'd already agreed to coach England at this point. So it was a little premature. And then, but I don't blame him. I mean, a chance to coach a Currie Cup or Super Rugby team versus a national side like England, you got to take the England. And then, of course, they ran off this long streak of win after win after win. Did you have a memory from the 2015 World Cup that might be interesting? Or
let's see. No, I mean it was another great experience. And again, like any opportunity you have to be in the World Cup is something worth remembering. I had a few injuries in that tournament, which made it tougher for me. But Olympic Stadium was against the Springboks was pretty special for sure. Absolutely.
Well, listen, Blaine, it's been fascinating to have you on. I really appreciate coming on, and good luck at Oxford. That should be interesting. What got you interested in Oxford? Is it just a great program, or an opportunity to go back to the UK and a great program, or?
Yeah, I think a bit of that, a bit of both for sure. I mean, it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I've looked at the university while I was overseas, and I love my international experience, and I'm kind of keen to, kind of lean into that. And Oxford is obviously a pretty impressive academic institution. So, opportunity to challenge myself in an environment like that is something I'm really looking forward to.
Well, I've been eyeing a PhD program at King's College over there, and also another one up there at Leeds, a couple programs. So not sure I want to go do a PhD right now, but I've been thinking about it. Maybe if the COVID goes away, maybe I'll see you over there somewhere in the UK, somewhere in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we go off, no worries. That'd be fantastic. You're in Jersey now. You're not that far away. But with COVID, you might as well be on the other side of the world the way things are going.
Yeah.
In order to come back into Pennsylvania, I'll have to be quarantined, apparently, according to my governor.
Yeah.
Who now expects us to wear a mask in our homes and in our cars as we go about our business. That's the new standard here in Pennsylvania. So we'll see how that goes. But before we close out, let me just give you a chance. Any last thoughts? You want to talk about rugby in general or life, or it seems like you have a great positive outlook on life. You've got your head screwed on straight. Anything you'd like to share with anybody before we close out?
No, I think, again, I hope everyone's doing safe and well, and hopefully everyone's able to sort of balance the current frustration with maybe future hope. So I always try to give myself a cue reminder, and I'm always helped by changing diapers at 3:00 in the morning. That there is, even though it's just not the most fun thing in the world, is there something I'd rather be doing in that moment, or would I be happier anywhere else? And probably not. So it's just, taking some time to remember to be grateful, and I'm grateful for my time in the game and what it's given me and the opportunities and experiences I've had, and grateful for your time, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
No, that'd be fantastic. Blaine, listen, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure having you on the channel for the Rugby Ascendant segment of my program. Really enjoyed it. And I know the Leicester fans loved you, but we enjoyed you as an Eagle and really appreciated the effort you put in. As you didn't complain about it, but you did note, you mentioned, waking up Sunday can be a bit rough. So it takes a lot to go out there in a pitch and take those hits. And also the brilliant moves and the great tries. Really enjoyed it. So thanks a lot for all you did for USA Eagles Rugby and for being the captain.
I appreciate that.
No, you're most welcome. Thank you. We really appreciate having you as an Eagle, and look forward to the next chapters you've got going in life. So thanks a lot.
All right, Chris. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, folks, that's Blaine Scully as he drops off there. I'll close out the program here. I'll give him a chance to drop off there. And thank you, Blaine, so much for being my guest today. Really did appreciate your presence here. I didn't mention I'm actually wearing a Wales polo from 2015, Wales Rugby Union here. As folks know on my program, I traditionally on my live streams wear some sort of rugby jersey or polo of some sort. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. My special thanks to Blaine Scully. He was a fantastic guest. I hope you guys found it informative. Learned a little bit about him and about USA Rugby, and also a little bit about his experience in college and about the game here in the U.S., which is it's a popular game. It's just not well known that it's popular. So maybe we can change that narrative for the USA with rugby going forward. Anyway, thanks a lot to Blaine. Folks, President Donald Trump is doing a press conference right now. I'm going to drop off and restart a stream and carry that with commentary and to see what the president has to announce, whether he is dropping his election results challenges, or he's pursuing them further, what's actually happening here. So it should be interesting. If I can get that feed up, I'll do a stream here in about 5 or 10 minutes. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate you for tuning in to the stream. And I will do a Night Owls edition here a little bit later on. And we'll be talking about the reprehensible behavior of the Polizei in Germany and their abuse of private citizens. We'll take a look at that and discuss further issues about what's happening around the world in the news of the day. Thank you so much for that, folks. I appreciate it. Smash the like button if you don't mind, those who are here. Really appreciate that. And we'll catch you all later. Later, maybe in 5 or 10 minutes if I can get a stream going. Anyway, we'll catch you either then or we'll catch you later on the evening stream and the Night Owls edition. Thanks a lot, everybody. God bless, and we'll catch you a little bit later on. Appreciate your watching and your patronage.